get started for today. So it's Friday. Couple notes about our schedule over the next few weeks and what's going on here. Okay. So we're going to we've got a few shifts involved, a few things to tell you about. Our presentations, I've removed that requirement from the project. You don't have to present your assignment because we're a little bit short on time. So that class on week 13 is out. We're not going to have class on the final week. You don't have so the exam will not be in week 14. Your exam's going to be in week 13 instead. Okay? I'm going to be away traveling on business for work that week, the final week of class. So your midterm will be the Friday morning of week 13. There'll be no class in week 14. Okay? Do you have other classes after this one on Friday or no? So you're done on Thursday then of that week. Okay? You'll be done a day early. You don't have to wake up and come in Friday morning. So instead of the presentations, the final exam will be August the 7th. Okay, so that's going to be a short week for you because Monday is also a holiday. So you got a 4-day week and then just the exam Friday morning. Ajax and jQuery we may or we may not get to. We'll see. So our rough schedule is this. So today what we're going to deal with is we need to deal with related data. So I'm going to push security back to next week. Okay, that'll still give you a week for implementing the security part in your assignment. But we need to talk about related data because in looking at many of your database diagrams, a lot of you will have relationships between tables in your assignments. And right now, we've looked at doing create, read, update, and delete, but we've only done it within a single table. We haven't looked at how do we, for example, fill a drop down from a lookup table, or how do we show a grid where we're presenting columns from multiple tables. And how do we represent master and child data in a .NET application. So that's what we're going to do today, because that's going to help many of you in your assignment. You're going to need to know how to do those things. So that's what we will deal with today, is related data. We will try to squeeze in a lab, and if I can, I'm even going to try to get the lab done in class time, so it'll be one you didn't take home, you just do before 11 o'clock, hopefully. We'll see how class goes in terms of time. Okay. So that would mean next week we will deal with authentication and security, and then we'll move exception handling down to the end of July to 2 weeks. We'll see whether we have time to deal with Ajax, whether we do a little bit of review, and then your exam is here. Okay. So I'm not too worried if we don't get into Ajax. It was kind of a nice to cover topic. If we get to it, we get to it. If we don't, it's certainly not critical. Michelle?
The exam, is it going to be the way you usually do it?
No, the exam is actually going to be, it will be open book, but it's actually going to all be question and answer. Okay? It's not really my preferred format. The challenge is I'm away this week. I'm going to meet with the teachers of our sister college in India because we're launching our web program in India starting in the fall, where our students in India can study in India for semesters 1 and 2, and then they come here in summer, and then they study here in Canada with the domestic students for semesters 3 and 4. So we're starting that program. Georgian's already been doing this with a few other programs for several years, and the web program is starting there. So I'm going to be there that week meeting with the faculty, making sure that all the students there are going to learn all the same things as the students here in semesters 1 and 2. So the challenge is if I'm there and I have practical exams in all my classes, I'm not going to be able to do that and get things marked. And I only have the final marks are due the following week. So kind of by necessity, you're just going to get a question and answer exam because basically you can just do it, you're going to get a grade, you'll basically get your grade right away on Blackboard.
So it'll be like multiple choice?
It will be multiple choice. There may be some other formats to it as well. It will be open book, so you will not have to build. Okay. There will probably be code snippets on there, like what does this code do with choices, or what's wrong, how would you fix this, or what would you add, like a fill in the blank. It will be that type of exam. So similar to the question and answer part of the midterm. Okay. I would prefer to do a practical exam. It's just really not feasible. The other benefit is obviously if I just give you a question and answer, then software configuration during the exam is not a problem, right, if you're not building stuff. you'll still be able to use Visual Studio, and you can still try pieces of code out and use your solutions to answer the questions. That's fine. Okay. So that's kind of the schedule. Related data today, security next week, exception handling review, and then the final exam and no class in the last week. Okay. So what we should do, I'm hoping everybody has a copy of the database running now on their server so you can connect to it. If you do, then we don't have to rebuild or reconfigure the database from last week. A few of you, I know a few of you have just finally got SQL Server running. If you've got an SQL Server running, you just need to create a new database if you don't have one yet. And then you need to grab the script that's on Blackboard from week, I think it's from last week, from week 8. Down at the bottom, you need to grab that Contoso DB SQL script. You need to download it to your computer, open up Management Studio, and create a new query in your database and run that script, because it will build 4 tables and populate them for you. If you already have the database running, you're good. So then what I want to do is I'm going to open up my solution from last week. I'm going to export it as a template, and then I'll build a lesson 10 solution. So I'll build a new project for this week, but I'll use lesson 9 as my template, so it will copy in all of the files. What I would suggest, actually, if you did the lab, use the files from the lab, because your lab has more code in it and more pages than your in-class files. So if you did lab 2, use your lab 2 solution rather than your week 9 solution. Okay. If you did not do the lab and you did not have a complete solution of lesson 9 from last week, you can grab mine off of Blackboard from the lesson 9 folder. I think I just gave you the link to the GitHub repository. So you can just go to GitHub and you can download the zip file if you need to. Again, if you're working with your own solution, that would be better, because your own solution already has your database credentials in there. If you grab mine off of GitHub, you're going to have to open up web.config and change those credentials so you can connect to your database. So I'm going to open my project from last week. Again, if you did the lab, just work with your lab files. So all I'm going to do with my solution from last week is click File and Export Template. I'll just accept all the defaults here. I'll uncheck that option, doesn't really matter, and I'll click Finish. And this will create a lesson 9 template so I can build a new solution for today, and it will just pull in everything from my lesson 9. So I'm going to create a new project for today. And under Visual C#, somewhere in here, here's my lesson 9 template. So I'll say use this as my template, and I'll just call this COMP 2084 lesson 10.
What lesson is this? This is lesson 10 now?
Yeah. So in my solution at the end of class, so last week we basically, over the last 2 weeks, we've built the department page and the department details. If you did the lab, you also have the students page and student details. Okay. So my solution is missing those. So to get it started, I'll just click on debug and start without debugging. Just to get the application up and running in my browser. Again, if you're grabbing mine off of GitHub, you're going to have to redo the database connection in the web.config file because it's set up to connect to my database, not to yours. So this is where we left off the end of class last week before I gave you the lab. So I could see a list of departments. I could add a new department. So we did all this together in class. I could edit it. Or finally, I could delete.
So once you go, like, for a database, yeah, I made the comp one, that's what I wanted.
And did you run this, do you run the database script on it?
It's in there, like, I remember running it last week.
Okay, if you ran it last week, then you don't have to run it again.
Okay.
You should have the tables.
All right.
So if you want to double check and make sure that it's there, if you click on your database and click on tables, there should be 4 tables in the list.
Okay, so I'm under com, like the com one says tables,
Yep.
and there's 4, like courses, departments, enrollments.
Okay, good. That's what you need. So if you have that from last week, you're good. You don't have to do anything in here. Right? So you should have, I have some additional tables that we'll get to next week, but you should have courses, departments, enrollments, and students.
Okay. So my database.
Yep, so your database is fine, is set up, if you can see it.
Did we do a JavaScript validation with the time of enrollment date?
The enrollment date is for students. Okay.
Did we?
What we should do, I guess I should point that out, because yeah, I did mark your labs.
Like,
You know-
I got Mark stopped for not having the JavaScript thing, but like I don't remember learning it other than.
It wasn't JavaScript that you needed. Okay. You know what? I will open up those files. If you did not do the lab, then if you go into your lesson 10 folder on Blackboard, I'm going to add the files to my project. I don't have the students pages, but I'll add them. In the lesson 10 folder, whoops, did I not put them up here? Sorry, you know what? They're here. If you go and click on assignments, I attached them to lab 3 in case you don't have them. If you go into assignments, there's a zip under lab 3. Here's studentpages.zip. This has got students.aspx and student details, which we should put in our project. If you did the lab, you have these pages. If you didn't do lab 3, you don't. So I'm going to download these because I don't have them in my project. I just have departments. So I'm going to download this zip folder. So I can right-click my student pages and choose Save Link. I'm going to save them into my lesson 10 folder and then add these pages to my project.
You downloaded this from, oh, that's lab 3.
So it's just, I've just taken the pages that, yeah, you were supposed to do for lab 3 and I've zipped them up. I want to add them into my project for today and then I'll come to your question. So I'm just going to put them right in my project directory where all my other pages are. So it's just a zip. So again, if you did the lab, you don't need to grab my pages. So now I'm just going to take my zip and extract all the files here. I'm just going to choose extract all. I don't want them in a subfolder called student pages. I just want them right in my root directory with all my other pages.
So in lesson 10?
Yep, so just in my lesson 10, I'm going to extract those 6 files. So that will give me these pages. I'll highlight them in blue. Okay. So these 6 pages are what was in the zip.
Yes.
So I've put them in my directory. I need to add them to my project. Putting them in the directory on Windows doesn't automatically add them to the project in Visual Studio. So if I want to add them in,
Are we dragging them right into the lesson 9 folder?
no, put them in your folder for today, your lesson 10
Yeah,
folder.
yeah, but all the files that you had from lesson 10, you don't bring in the student file, you just take the pages out and put it in that lesson 10 file, right?
You take everything in this zip file
Yeah. You throw it
and
in.
throw them in your lesson 10 folder.
Yes.
Okay? So now I want to add them to my project. So all I need to do, if I click on this button on the toolbar, it says show all the files in the project directory. This one right here at the top, the very right. And now it shows me student.aspx and students. And they're both
What?
white. Click this button, show all files. So I'm going to click on student and students. And if I right click and say include in my project, they now get added to my solution
Include.
in project.
Both.
I can turn off this show all files now. And now if I build my solution, the 2 student pages should be part of my project. Oh, I just have to change this line because it doesn't match.
Where do we, I'm just trying to find where we type in the database thing again.
In web.config.
Web.config.
So I've got to change these couple of lines. So on students.aspx, it now has to say comp 2084 lesson 10. So that matches my other pages. And what did we call it here? Default connection. I have to change.
Okay, so we're changing.
So I'm just clicking on these errors down below because it tells me any place I have an error. So where it says comp 2007 entities, I need to change that
What, default connection?
to default connection. Yep. Because that's the name we used for our database connection in this project. And here also I've got to change that to comp 2084 lesson 10. Adam?
Take the files out and get, it comes up as like department details instead of students.
The student files aren't on Git. If you grab my stuff from Git, it only has the department pages, which we built in class last week. The student pages you were supposed to build on your own for the lab. So I'm providing those to you if you didn't do the lab. If you did the lab, you already have these pages in your project. Okay, so any instance at the top, any page that connects to our database, we need the name of our current solution .models.
My thing's still red when I type it in.
What does the error message say, Scott?
Default connection cannot be found.
So in your web.config file, you don't have a connection called default connection.
Oh, I haven't.
So this is what you had to do for the lab. So you had to have your students page with edit and delete links and an add link. So I'm coming to Mackenzie's question. Right. Not only are these fields required, one of the things I did, first of all, several of you left out the enrollment date. Okay, the enrollment date field needs to be here for adding and editing. But I was able to crash many people's because I could do this. Okay, and then I'd get an error saying it wasn't a valid date. Now, there's a few ways of validating. A few people just added type equals date or text mode equals date. That only works in Chrome. That's not, that attribute won't work in Firefox or Internet Explorer. So how did I get this? Few people did it correctly. How can we properly validate to make sure that we're actually getting a proper date?
Well, regular expression.
We could do something simpler than a regular expression.
Validate.
Like a range validator?
That's what we'll do it. So we could just use a range validator. We specify that the type is date and just give it a minimum and an arbitrarily high maximum. That will make sure it will work in all browsers, and that will ensure that we're getting a proper date from the user.
So when I was doing this, I was looking through the requirements. Nowhere did it say I needed an input field for this. And so, so then I was sitting there thinking, well, if they're signing these people up when they're enrolling, then that means the enrollment day is going to be today's date. So I always just had it setting today's. I had it hard coded, so remove all forms of human error and set it up so it would match today's date.
Well, you could, except that means the enrollment date is always going to be when you put somebody in the system, which may or may not be the case, right? Maybe someone sends in their paperwork, but it's entered in the system later.
Yeah, but they're not officially enrolled.
Yeah, okay.
That was my thoughts around it. It's like it was a little ambiguous going through it.
Okay, I thought all fields are required would mean all fields are included. So okay, point taken, maybe I should have been a little more clear about that. Fair enough.
And that you need a validation on the enrollment
Even if I was wrong, I should have done bonus points because I was going above and beyond the
date.
functions.
Because I didn't know you had to validate the enrollment date. Like, I didn't even cry during this lab.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
good.
legitimate.
Well, I mean, most people attempted at least to validate it as a date because I at least got an HTML5 attribute, right? If I gave you the form, why would I allow you to put in junk data, right? If I'm going to have you build it, I'm going to have you build it right. So, okay, I'll take some of the responsibility for not being completely clear. You guys have to take some of the responsibility because if you're not completely clear, what should you do? Is check, right, is check. So I'll take some of the responsibility, but if I make things not clear, the time to go, oh, is that what you wanted, is before you submit it, so we can clarify it and get it right.
Can I see the code again?
Sure. Okay, so this control, this doesn't really work. If you add text mode equals date, it really won't require the user to enter a proper date. If I take this out, watch, I'll take out my range validator for a minute. I'll just use text mode equals date and type equals date. I'm not going to be forced to enter a date.
Good date time off now. That's a good one.
Right. Those checks don't actually work. I think the type equals date will work in Chrome. I'm pretty sure it'll work in Chrome.
To not get the date to show up, do you just do convert to date? Or, sorry, not to get the time to show up?
I will show you how to do it. So this works in Chrome, but it only works in Chrome. doesn't work in other browsers, which means you can't rely on it, right? If that's all we do, specify type equals date, somebody can crash it in other browsers. So also for those of you who are religious Chrome users, make sure you test your stuff in other browsers.
Wait, so is that WebKit specific or is that just Chrome specific?
I don't know the answer to that, Brandon, to be honest with you. Okay. So the range validator will write the jQuery that will work cross-browser. To answer your question, Rachel, about the format, I've just entered it this way. So when I click on edit, I'm not parsing the time. If the time was there, it would show up. But in the script I gave you, there is no time, so all of these records are in the SQL script. So in the script I gave you, I think if we look at the data, I don't think there's any times on there.
Yeah, that's why I was confused when it started giving me times. It's like,
Well, it will be there. Let's just see what happens. They were there in the grid, but we used so if I enter one this way, right? So if I don't put a date in and run the query, it doesn't save it.
someone was born a long time ago. You're one.
Database am I connecting to? Sorry, just give me a second. Make sure what database I'm using. Oh, I'm working locally. Duh. Help if I looked in the right database. So it just saves the date this way. It doesn't save the time here. And in our grid, I just filtered out the time if there was one. Where are students? Using this property, if there was a time in our enrollment date column, we can just add the data format string, and that will specify that it's only a date, and if there is a time value, to exclude it from the list. So those files, these files, the student files are on Blackboard if you want them. If you want to use see mine, they're in that zip. So just as clarification, anything else you submit to me for marks, you have to properly validate it, okay? If I forget to say things are required and that's a blanket statement, anything else you give me, so in your assignments, any forms in your labs, I will expect proper validation, right? Don't build forms that users can just put in garbage data and crash them. The .NET validators are really easy to use, so take advantage of them, please. So if you did the lab, we did departments in class, you did students for labs or for the lab, or you now have my pages. So what we want to do is look at courses. So right now we don't have a course page.
Can you just quickly go back to where you validate the
Sure. So that was the validator that does it, highlighted in blue. So our department and our students are kind of self-contained. We can do create, read, update, and delete on both. We want to be able to manage courses today. We're probably not going to do editing. Well, We maybe not, won't do all of it, but we want to look at the relational part. So I'm just going to open up the database for a minute. Actually, the easiest way to look at our database is through our model that we built. We actually can get a diagram right here. So I'm just going to open up this EDMX file. We used the entity framework to generate this, do this wizard and build the diagram. So here's what our database actually looks like. Pardon? Yeah, so we've dealt with departments on their own. We've dealt with students. Today, the next thing I want to do is build a page for first for viewing the courses. And then we want to build a page that we can add or edit a course. Okay. And when we do that, we also want to include information about the departments. So step one, what I want you to do is add a new web form called courses.aspx. Go ahead and do that now. And your web form should use your master page, so it inherits our header and footer and CSS. So add courses.aspx. Make it all lowercase. And I'll show you what this should look like in a minute. Yep. So the courses page is going to look something like this. Okay, there's a few features here we can leave out. So the first thing I want you to do is just build a grid. So next thing I want you to do is build a grid that shows the course ID, the title, and the credits. You can leave out the department for now. We'll come back to that. Right? So the course table has an ID, title, and credits. The department name actually comes from a related table. So let's leave that column out for now. Just build a grid with these three columns. Course ID, title, and credits. You don't have to add any paging. Okay, you can just show all the courses in one list. So add an ASP grid view to your page. And then when the page loads, you need to connect to the database, get the list of courses, and bind that list of courses to the grid. So we've already done it a few times. We did it in class together with the departments. Hopefully, most of you did it for your lab on the students page. I now want you to just build a simple courses grid. Okay? So just those three columns. No paging. You can leave out the links for now. Don't worry about delete.